Hello, this is Todd Covert from ACA Track. This is going to be a short video on the automated data mapping within ACA Track. We're going to locate our data mapping under the company and division section right here in the ACA Track system. So if I click on the ACA Track company and division information, I go down here to my selected division here with the double towers. And I'm going to move over here to the second tab, and this is where I'm going to find all of my data mapping. So inside of our data mapping, we're going to have information around division codes. These are likely your EIN numbers that you have um, within the system, and you can see here we have a EIN ending in 89 and 80, and then we have a number of different coverage type codes. And what we've done here, obviously, is we've taken your data language, like insured, and mapped it over to the language needed for the IRS. So we went down through your various data language that is exported from your system, and we simply convert it into the language needed by the IRS. Now, if you need to make an edit on this, if, let's say, for example, insured is actually elected in your data set, we would simply come in here, enter elected, and that would map over to the standard coverage code needed for the IRS as insured. This is a great feature because allows you not to have to map all of your data language into the language needed by the IRS, and will save you a bunch of time with formatting all of your files. And then the same thing down here for job status codes, whatever your job status codes are for full-time or variable hour, those can also be mapped into the language needed by the IRS. So now that we've had our mapping set up, and this is very important that we have all of your correct mapping done. So if something shows up in the data that is not here on the data mapping screen, it will kick out in the validation section of the error report. It's an employee file, it's through October, it's an inspection batch, which is just a test batch. We're going to use our employee template, and then we can select our file. After I select our file on our local PC, ABC company, etc., and then we can upload it. Once we upload it, within about 3 to 4 minutes, we're going to get back a summary of first the inspection. And remember, the inspection results are just making sure all of the column headers are correctly noted in the file upload. If you've altered our file format at all, you will see some errors in the initial file inspection. So let's say, for example, you renamed your column header, L name instead of last name. That would show up in this initial inspection. But this template was obviously uploaded correctly. However, here we have our second round of inspection. We have our validation inspection, and we can see down here that we have some failures around job status codes. We have some failures around division codes, plan ID codes, and then also coverage type codes. So the software has automatically went through the data file upload and is saying, hey, timeout. You've told us about some job status codes that were not in the original data mapping. You've told us about some division codes that were not in the original data mapping, and so forth. So what I can do is I can come over here. I can click on the red icon here, which is the validation report. And this is going to generate me a report, and it's going to show me a summary, a detailed summary of all of those errors that popped up. So we can see we have 3 employee records that have failed, and these are all of the summary codes again that have failed: job status, division, XL plan ID, coverage end date, coverage type. Then down here in the bottom is the additional tabs that will go into detail of each of these errors specifically. So you can see here on row 2, you told us there was a elected coverage type in the coverage type category. This was not provided to us in the mapping section. So if we went over here to the data mapping section again and looked under coverage type, you told us that there would be an elected coverage type in the data file. And you can see here, there is no elected coverage type. This customer said that the coverage type was insured, not elected, it was insured. So the software is automatically kicking that out, saying, you didn't tell us anything about an elected coverage type code. That we assume is an error in the data upload. Now, again, if that was not an error and it really should be elected, you can simply click here on the little pencil and edit that that quickly. And then next time the data gets uploaded, the system will accept that. Okay, let's go back over here and look at some of those other errors that possibly were generated. ID number 3, they told us that they had a job status code of FT and they had a EIN that was ending in 86. So if we go back over here to the screen, I'm going to bet you there are no job status codes noted as FT, and there's no division codes noted as ending in 86. Software is saying, we've identified a division code that you never told us about. So many of your validation errors that are popping up are simply because of unidentified or incorrect mapping codes here. So if I added a division code that ended in 86, so what I would do is, let's just say I copy and paste this. I'm going to go up here and add, and I'm going to end this in 86. Okay, so now you can see here I've added an additional division code, and the next time when the data goes in, that error will not come out because the mapping is done correctly. And then remember we mentioned, I bet you there was no full-time category in the job status code. So you can see here, this customer told us that the job status code for full-time was going to be spelled out full-time. So I would simply go in here, add my job status code under my data as FT, and I would map that to the language, the standard job status code needed by the IRS as full-time. And then you can see here now, the next time the data is uploaded, the FT will be recognized as well as the division code ending in 86. And again, remember I had a elected coverage type code. So I would enter elected, and that would translate into insured. And now all of my mapping is fixed under my data upload process. If I want to drill down a little bit into each individual record, again, we have the summary tab on the bottom. We have a detailed validation report of where the error occurred, even on what row of the Excel document. And then the third tab down here at the bottom is the actual record. So what's great about our system this year is now I can just come over here, and if I wanted to fix the mapping right here, if it was an error, I can fix it right here, or I can add a new mapping code over on the data mapping screen. So you can clearly see here that in row number 1, they have a Plan 3 ID that they didn't tell us about. They had a elected coverage type that they did not tell us about. There is your full-time recognized as FT and not full-time. And then there's your division code ending in 86. And that was obviously not recognized. So again, this is just a short video on data mapping. It's important that we have all of your proper division codes, your coverage type codes, and your job status codes, because if something is not recognized in your data, in the validation report section, that red icon file section, these errors will occur, and either the data needs to get fixed in the source data that's being uploaded, or come here to the data mapping screen under the company plans and division and correct your mapping. So thank you very much for viewing this video on data mapping and fixing validation errors.